Hello and welcome to all our family, friends, my mom, Mark's mom, the whole variety of whoever's leaning in to watch tonight live at 5.
Yep.
It's the end of a week, Mark. We
Oh.
made it to a Friday. I know for most people every day, it feels like one perpetual Groundhog Day, but we're going to mark the weekend in style. We're going to kick it off in style with a fantastic evening of Live at 5.
We are excited. It has been a good week. We took Tuesday night and Thursday night off, only 3 Live at 5s this week. But it's been brilliant, and we're super excited for tonight. So thank you for joining us, whether you're on Instagram or Facebook Live, whatever platform you're beaming in on. It's great to have you with us this Friday night. But who we got, Gabriel?
Tonight, we have got an incredible guest. We've brought out the big guns, and I'm not talking about his biceps. I'm talking about his stature, his reputation, and it is the hit musician, Michael Mol.
Oh, amazing.
Oh, no, sorry, I apologize.
No, Matthew doesn't have those.
I apologize. This is not Michael Mol for all the millennials. This is Michael Mol. And I know somebody, I think we've got the better end of the deal.
I'm going to have to change my questions here, man.
No, guys, my camera's too close. I can't wave my hands like you guys are waving your hands. So if I do this, is that part of the... Okay,
we find if you wave your hands more, they don't actually listen to what you're saying. So you just got to keep it going. You just
high energy. Just high energy.
Yes.
But
if
Michael
you ask me
Mol,
to sing one of Michael Mol's songs, I'll be waving my hands too, man. So you couldn't hear my voice.
I was debating whether to introduce you that way or to ask you a little bit later in the interview about your son, Matthew, and how his career is going. But I felt we'll just go with the big guns up front.
Yeah, that would have been too much of a dig, Gabe.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Honestly.
But Michael Mol, everyone, which is an absolute privilege to have you with us, Michael, finally giving us some credibility to our Live at 5 show with someone who's an expert in the field. But before we get to what you're doing with your life here and now and lockdown and some perspectives around this season, I'd love to throw your memory back 24 years ago when you were first crowned Mr. South Africa.
No, Gabe, no.
What?
That.
We are going there. We're going. You know why he's doing that, Michael, is because Gabriel was Mr. Zimbabwe 2007.
So that, right.
So, I mean, you guys
still
are
got your
basically...
sash, because I've still got my sash.
Yeah, you're kindred spirits. It's
Basically
amazing.
connected.
I mean, honestly, it's just amazing how much you guys have in common, actually.
I've got to tell you guys, on that night, it was the funniest thing. My dad, my dad was there. You know, you greeted your moms and dads as you started Live at 5.
Yes.
My dad was there, and I'll never forget. He came onto stage, he gave me a big hug, and he said, "Well done, son. What have you done?" Just a classic kind of, my word. You know?
That's a dad right there.
No, it's incredible.
What did your dad say, Gabe?
I would love to go back into the moment, but it's not about me tonight, Mark. I might get emotional.
Yes.
And the people are tuning in, not for us.
The people are here for Michael Mol.
We want Michael.
I just will say, Michael, that photo we had of you earlier did look like you looked a little bit younger on that photo we put on internet earlier.
I didn't say, that photograph. That was from way, way back. Still in my scrubs, dark hair. It's amazing, man. Where'd you get that? That must have been... You must have had to get to dial-up to get that photograph.
No, we've got skills. We've got skills.
We're going deep into the resources there. No, but Michael's really is. All jokes aside, we are hugely privileged to have you online with us tonight. And maybe just give us a bit of a perspective of how lockdown is going for you. You're a father of 3 kids and a husband of 1 wife, the last time I checked online. But why don't you tell us how you are navigating these times? I know you are also working, you are in media. What has this season been like for you on a personal note?
So, Gabe, here's the story. I was heading off to the States on the 27th of February, right? There's a date for you, very specific. I remember going through Heathrow and making a whole bunch of calls because I decided to resign from Hello Doctor. And that was the first kind of gap I had. So I made a whole bunch of phone calls, said goodbye to everybody, said, thanks so much. It's been brilliant. I'm out of here. New chapter. Got into a plane, landed in San Diego, and the world changed. It was literally, the conference was canceled on the spot. Coronavirus is real.
Wow.
Get back on the plane, go home quickly before it's too late.
Yeah.
Got back home. Someone at the conference had COVID, so all of a sudden I was in quarantine for 2 weeks. Came out of quarantine for a day. No, back home.
Oh, back home. Okay.
Got back home, spent a day was in quarantine for 2 weeks, came out for a day, and then President Ramaphosa said we're in lockdown for 3 weeks, then 5 weeks. So I've been at home for a long, long time, and it's been quite an experience. Even from a career-changing perspective to just family, it's been something else. So getting a little bit of cabin fever, quite honestly, but But I think loving the family time, and I think most people I speak to, that comes up all the time. I've spent more time with my kids, more time with my wife than I ever had. And even if we're working from home, it's just the fact that we're in each other's company, we're rubbing shoulders, we're kind of connecting. I mean, I've picked up a sense of humor that my youngest and my daughter in particular has. It's just beautiful. I mean, I just keep laughing at these guys, which I don't think I ever would have picked up if I hadn't spent that amount of time with them.
You up for some kid swap for a little bit? I mean, I've got 3 primary schoolers, and the Afrikaans has changed the game. I did higher grade Afrikaans in Durban. It's basically like lower grade, grade 3 in Cape Town. I don't know. It's not working out for me.
And Michael, you did mention
my kids are old enough to kind of do school by themselves, so no swaps, unfortunately, man.
We'll have another
quite happy with
lockdown
self-motivation.
You mentioned rubbing shoulders with your kids, and I take that as just a metaphor, because that is all we actually are allowed to do these days. No more hugs, no more physical contact. Tell us about, you do mention Hello Doctor, and that's obviously where a lot of people might reference you from, or maybe if you're throwing it back a little bit further, Top Billing and the SABC 3 days. Maybe could you just talk us through that sort of journey a little bit about the media world? And we see you from this side of the screen. We're still watching you from this side of the screen, even in this conversation. But what is that world like? And what is it? How is it looking at the moment?
Some have likened Live at 5 to Top Billing in the good old days. That's just some comments we've got recently. You might pick it up. I don't know.
Was that with previous presenters or the current presenters?
No, there's been a change, a couple changes. We had the previous Mr. Zimbabwe as well.
Yeah, of course.
There you go. So Top Billing was a huge privilege, guys. I mean, that was people used to stop me in the streets and say, "Man, I'm so jealous you have the best job in the world." And for a while, it really did feel like that. But it got to a point where I suddenly felt like I was a poster boy for the wrong things. Wow. We live in a country where there is so much need. Do I really want to be espousing those kinds of aspirations? And yes, it was aspirational. There's nothing wrong with that. But it just felt for me, and I wanted to do a bit more. And out of that came the Hello Doctor show, the Dr. Mol show, which is really kind of entertaining medical insights and that sort of thing. And then the conversations in the streets changed. People would stop me and say, "Hey, man, thank you so much for what you said. I lost 3 kilograms, or I realized I'm diabetic, or I quit smoking," or, and that kind of feedback was great. But even so, we were still limited by what we could and couldn't do on SABC, because that's the nature of an advertiser-funded show, for example, which was what Hello Doctor was. Fast forward to a month ago, in fact, and we launched Truth TV, an opportunity to actually own the channel and have an opportunity to have our say up on screen. In other words, so many streaming video channels now and channels have this little disclaimer that says, whatever you see on this show, we don't take responsibility for it. It's not up to us. On Truth TV, we kind of dismissing that and saying, no, we do take responsibility for everything that is on this particular channel.
Amazing.
And, it stands for biblical worldview. It's a place you can put your kids in front of. It's safe. It's God honoring. And for the first time in ages, it's wonderful to be able to own the platform.
Amazing.
And produce the content. So
beautiful.
that's a fast
like
forward through media.
And what is there an emphasis? What's the message that you're pushing out in terms of truth, or is it still something of digging into different stories? What are we talking?
So Truth TV is really saying kids are spending 5 to 7 hours on a screen on a daily basis. That's not going to change. You guys know as parents, stop watching or get off your screens isn't just an impossible cry. So we're saying, hang on a second, instead of trying to change that, let's just change what is being watched on those screens. It said culture is today what Hollywood said it was 20 years ago. Yeah. And as Christians, we've been quiet about that. So for me, Truth TV is an opportunity to partake in that culture, to create a bit of a cultural renewal basis and start telling stories that matter. I mean, there's nothing better than a story. Gabe, we spoke about this a little earlier. They stay with you. They're memorable. They resonate with you. And if they're true, and if they're stories that have meaning, even more so. So that's kind of where we're at, man. That's for me in my house, Truth TV. That's what we're
Gabe loves a story. You're not scared of a story.
I'm not scared of a story or two.
A couple of stories. You've actually got your friends, Rich and Jax Gavin, just shamelessly posting and giving Truth TV a good punt there on our comments. So big shout out to your mates in Durban and our mates there. And the many other friends. I saw Andrew Crawford from the UK and people following. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday night. We have Dr. Michael Mol here. hello, doctor. Do you get that a lot? I mean, every now and again, wouldn't mind
every
one of
now
those.
and again, yes, yeah. And I get people singing it too, which is kind of cool. So I don't know if you want to try that, Mark. That'd be brilliant.
Gabe's actually far more gifted when it comes to that.
No. I'm just the face of Live at 5. Mark is definitely the voice. So.
And X Factor Zimbabwe, you also won that, okay?
Oh, just why not? Why not? Anything that happened in Zimbabwe, you can throw it in.
Yes.
But Michael,
hey, you guys mentioned Jackie McGavin just briefly. Jackie, and Jackie's blog is amazing.
Yes.
As a super mom, it's just I went to Jackie first. Said, Jax, tell me about Truth TV. What do you want? What do you see?
Good.
What do you like? So that's what we're doing as well. We kind of saying, guys, let's create a bit of a tribe. What content do you want on the show? Because we want to honor that, and we want to kind of build this thing together.
So you're
Jax,
also having 7 kids.
Sorry, Gabe, I interrupted.
You're also having 7 kids, Mark. Is that what that confession was? Is that what?
I've lost you there. Sorry, breaking up.
Yeah, lockdown. Michael Mol, 4 more kids coming. It's a miracle.
No, but I think it's an amazing, just listening, even just picking up the threads of some of your stories, how you even making a decision to change direction from top billing because of, hey, don't want to be what I'm representing. Even the season of moving from Hello Doctor into Truth TV. How do you make those sort of big decisions? And maybe there's a whole bunch of people who are making big decisions at this time based on circumstances, based on pressure. But how do you make them? It sounds like your decisions are made out of conviction. Maybe help navigate people through that.
Absolutely, Gabe, but not an easy decision. I don't think any decision really is. We can live with doubt for the rest of our lives and sort of stay safe and not move. And I'm stealing a line from Ken Costa here, who's really instrumental in some of this decision. And he said you need to live through doubt. Wow, if you're making a big decision, you consult and you pray about it, and you get great advice, you get friends on board, and then you make that decision. Because if you live with doubt, if you kind of let doubt sort of just freeze you, you're never going to move forward. So for me, this was a case of it's not a sure win at all, but I'm going to live through doubt and make this decision. And ironically, for 10 years, I've been driving telemedicine. I really see that as a value add for this country, particularly with our disparate healthcare system. And for 10 years, I've battled the Health Professions Council. I've battled doctors who kind of just kicked against this, dismissed me, and were vehemently opposed to me. And on my very last day at Hello Doctor, if you want to clock out at 5 o'clock, I did at 7 o'clock. The Health Professions Council, 2 hours after I quit, 10 years, amended the guidelines to accept telemedicine. It's a moment like that that you think, God, this has to only be your timing. And after that, just the phone calls come in from doctors saying, man, we've hated you for years. Now we want you to really help us. What do we do? How do we make telemedicine work, particularly around COVID-19 and coronavirus?
Yeah.
And that was just, again, a realization of it's God's sovereignty, man. That could only have been God's timing that allowed that to happen. So I don't lie awake at night doubting, wondering, have I made a mistake? It was a prayerful decision, and we move forward, despite the circumstances. We plan, God purposes.
Is that Ken Costa's book, Know Your Why, that you...
It was exactly that. Yes, Mark.
I might be looking at that one right now. And actually, if you're looking for a great book too, you're making big decisions, you're asking, what is life about? And I know that there's some great voices who've spoken into the why, but I think it's an outstanding book. If you just want to make big decisions with faith and encouraging and allow God to reveal something of the why of our stories, I think is a great voice for this time.
Yeah. No, it's phenomenal. And there's a great devotional that goes with it.
Yeah,
Ken Costa is just solid down the line.
Yeah, he's a champion.
It's a happy coincidence that you mentioned that book, because that's the first book Mark's read this year. So it's just wonderful.
It's in the 20s.
The book with a summary, Mark.
No, we can carry on. Yeah, who else are you reading? No, I'm joking.
I'm just joking, but that was a lucky coincidence.
Gabriel.
Surely. Gabriel. A learned gentleman on my left and a learned gentleman on my right.
2 out of 3 is not bad.
Here I am, stuck in the middle with you. But anyway.
Nice.
But Michael, maybe you've mentioned the word sovereignty of God, and it is a big word.
Yeah.
And but maybe how would you talking about that? And I know in the season, as you mentioned, even the timing of the corona, of the lockdown, of Hello Doctor, and how it's almost like this perfect storm for you, and God leading you through it. How would you describe the sovereignty of God to a layman like me, to somebody who's watching this and trying to wrestle with all these big questions of why God, why now, and navigating their hearts through the season? How would you succinctly be able to help take people through that journey?
So, Gabe, a little while ago, I was reminded again of the Stockdale paradox. And if you don't know what the Stockdale paradox is, there's this Admiral Jim Stockdale, who's the highest ranking military officer during Vietnam, who was caught up in a prisoner of war, the Hilton Hanoi, I think at the time, for 8 years, was tortured for, over 20 times. It was horrendous, and yet he survived. And it was one of the most defining moments of his life. And he was asked about how he got through that trial of notes. I mean, he was disfiguring his face and beating himself up so that he couldn't be used as propaganda for, prisoners are being treated well. And he said this. He said, "I never lost sight of the end of the story. I never lost hope in the end of the story. And yet, and this is the paradox, I had to deal with the harsh realities of today." And I love that. And I just thought, for where we are right now, you cannot lose sight. You cannot lose hope in the end of the story. We have a God who loves us. We have a God who intimately knows us, who knows what our stories, who knows what the next chapter holds. That's the sovereignty of God. Nothing's going to change that. He's not asleep in the boat. At any moment, God calms the storm and can change all that. So we have and we serve a sovereign God. And so for me, that was just phenomenal. I deal with the harsh realities of today without losing hope in the end of the story. And interestingly, Jim Stockdale was asked this question: who didn't survive? And his answer blew me away. He said that the optimists didn't survive. Yeah. Wow. Those guys have said, we'll be out by Easter. Easter came and went. We'll be out by December, by Christmas. Yeah. Christmas came and went. He said they died of a broken heart. It's not optimism. It's a sense of I face the harsh realities of today without losing hope in the end of the story. That for me is the sovereignty of God.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah. You're a bit of an optimist, Gabriel.
I am. So I get.
So I reckon you wouldn't make it, buddy.
So I'm gone. I'm the first one out. Anyway.
It's a challenge, that whole process of navigating. Even I've some of the most consistent people I know. Yeah. There have been these conversations, and I found one of my I love consistency as an attribute. It's something that I want to achieve in life. I'd love people to say that of me, that over many years there's this consistency to your story in temperament and mindset and all these things. But it is a challenge in this lockdown and facing so many big external realities to keep your track, to keep online, and to keep your consistency at this time. We've had moments. Today I told my kids to just go somewhere I couldn't see them. I didn't actually care where that was. I'm not proud of it. If you're watching, I love you. But, there have just been these moments of overwhelming kid moments. I was on a Zoom in a serious meeting upstairs in our house. I looked out, and the kids were playing hide and seek, and the ones climbed on the roof of the house, hiding from his brothers. And I'm like, that's not a legal move for your game.
Or safe.
Yes. Yeah. So
but I think it's those sort of realities.
Yeah.
It's trying to navigate those things. And maybe to jump on the back of that, how are you processing that stuff, Michael? With you a full-time dad and hands-on dad, as you're mentioning, you've got this new television channel and pioneering new spaces there. How are you mending both of those realities that are high demand at a time like this, where there's so many other pressures? Maybe help talk us through that one life reality, where it's not fragmented life and cutting off, and this, I'm out here, I'm in here. How have you navigated that?
Yeah. I think, Gabe, there's many answers to that. For me, personally, it's just the idea of being present, and that sounds like a horrible cliche, but it's more than just being present. It's bringing energy to where I'm at right now. So if I'm at work, I'm really at work. But when I'm with my kids, I'm really with my kids. We're engaging. I look my boys and my girls in the eye. And we hug, we kiss. We're all in one family. By now, if none of us have got COVID, we're not going to get. So there certainly is no social distancing in our family. And part of being there, being present, being engaged, is also being intentional. So it's easy for conversation to dry up in a family when you've been together for this amount of time. Yeah. So we're intentional about what we talk to and how we engage. We have a little thing that we developed just because we're doing so many dinners together. Instead of dinners becoming boring and just eating together, we have Memory Mondays, which means you come to dinner on a Monday night with your phone, with a picture on the phone and a memory with that picture. You got to explain the memory. You got to tell us why this picture means something to you, and share the memory with the family. And we walk away from dinner that night with 5 amazing memories that we've kind of shared. Tuesday is So True Tuesdays. That's a scripture. That's something that God is speaking to you about. Wednesdays are Wacky Wednesdays. So something we've never done before, we do. A couple of weeks ago, we had, I'm embarrassed to say this, avocado and condensed milk smoothies. We found the recipe on some Vietnamese website. It was, it's health-wise, don't. But it was actually delicious.
The doctor told me to eat condensed milk. That's all I heard. Yeah. That's all I heard.
Heard it here first.
Condensed milk.
but just that kind of, we had dinner in the dark the other night. We turned the lights off, we blindfolded everybody, and we ate like we would if we were blind. So that was great. Thursdays are thoughtful Thursdays, so it's
amazing.
It's a way of engaging with kids. And we find on Sundays too, actually, I mean, online church, and you guys look like you're really great at that, but that's got its own set of challenges because we feel like we're out of community. We're not with one another again, and that's so important. And you know, Zooms don't just do that.
Yeah.
No.
But we found that online church for us allows us as a family to engage on a Sunday more than we normally engage, because I'm not sure what church is like for you. You know, we'll go to main church, kids will go off to Ignite and Kids Rock, etc. And often we go separate ways and kind of come together. And what did you learn? What was Kids Rock like? And and then Sunday continues. Whereas now we're sitting in front of the screen and we're engaging. We can stop and pause and ask and discuss and pray together as a family, which is great. And by the way, it's still just as hard to get kids and family to sit in front of online TV as it is to get them in the car. I mean, what is it with that? So yeah, it's been great. It really has been fascinating, and we've actually loved this time together as a family.
Beautiful. It is that thing of navigating.
I forgot the question, guys. Sorry.
No.
But whatever the question was, it was a great
It was a
answer.
great question.
So you
What
know
are
what? No one comes for the questions anyway. So.
I think it is that. I think to learn from each other. I know even we gave a shout out to Rich and Jax. I see Andy Clark from Joburg joining us. But we're learning so many different ways. We've had the privilege of having a young lady who's not part of our family stay with us through this time. We opened our home just before, and it's actually been an amazing. She's from a different culture, a different country, eating meals together every night, hearing stories, just engaging, watching my boys. Every night, prayer time starts with praying for this amazing lady and thanking the Lord that she's with us. And honestly, it's been the highlight of this time for us, as seeing the engagements, even learning and teaching my boys. We've had no other girls other than mom in our house. Now there's another girl. Even our Labrador is not a girl. And my boys have had to learn some new manners and some new ways, and I've actually loved that.
I think those are the sort of potentials of these moments where actually it's the whole, your rhythm of life that just keeps charging, almost stops, and you have to reframe it a little bit. And maybe you can help us as we bring this conversation to the tail end of it, Michael, as a doctor and also a man of faith here, somebody I think, as you said, I loved how you put it earlier with the Stockdale paradox, but just the ability to face the harsh realities of COVID-19 and the implications it's having on a nation at the moment. But also as a man of faith, why don't you speak to us from that perspective, if that's all right, and to put courage in people's hearts with maybe getting fearful about the what-ifs and the what could be and the unknown of this season?
Yeah. Gabe, it's a great question. And I think, again, to just give a shout out to Nikki Gumbel, did a great talk on choosing faith, not fear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys have spoken to that. And I just loved his approach, and those 6 things he spoke to, and I can't think of them right now. But I suppose the reality of COVID, and from a medical perspective, it needs to work its way through our community. There's just no other ways that we're going to avoid this. It's a microbe. It's a virus. It needs to get into our system. And the way we beat that is not by avoiding one another. The way we beat that is through a healthy immune system. Most of us have that. Some that don't are really going to battle. We get that. But at the end of the day, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's nothing that we need to kind of run from. And at the end of the day, it's so difficult to kind of play the medical doctor and the man of faith. And yet at the same time, I want to say, guys, we are in God's hands. We really are. This is not a surprise to him. This is not new to him. This has come and gone before. And for us to sort of stop our lives because of a little unseen enemy makes no sense at all. So from a faith perspective, it would be, guys, just do the sensible thing. Be wise with how you engage. If we ask to wash our hands and wash with soap. It sounds silly to say that, but soap actually destroys the virus. Water doesn't, for example. That's a silly thing to say, but just be wise with how we engage. Let's not be reckless. Let's not be stupid. Let's not face trials of many kinds because we're being idiots. Let's just face trials of many kinds because this really allows us to test our faith. It's experiencing the joy of testing the authenticity of our faith. So if you ask me, I think this is an opportunity to really, really experience the authenticity of our faith. Whenever before, or when do we honestly get a chance to really test our faith and the reality of it, the authenticity of it? We're never going to jump into a trial willfully, but now this has been brought on us through circumstances beyond our control. Businesses are closing. I mean, the second meeting I had with my staff, the second meeting was to say, guys, you're an amazing team. I can't pay you. I mean, how do you start a business like that? And how do you make a business like that survive? So there's incredible struggle and incredible trials. And yet, at the end of the day, as you started off by saying, okay, we have a Father who's faithful, we have a Father who's sovereign, and all we can do is trust in him and never lose hope in the end of the story.
Well, we always love pointing people to good voices to listen to. How can people hear more from you at Truth TV, your new endeavor, as it's finding traction? How can we point our people there in this season and in the weeks and months ahead?
Mark, thanks for asking. It's super complicated. I mean, if you guys can write this down, go to truthtv.com.
What?
There you go.
What?
TruthTV.com.
You couldn't get a longer one. It wasn't available, obviously. It was just...
wasn't available, yeah. We just had to take the short one. I was like, we'll take it.
That's amazing. We'll definitely be jumping online.
Yeah, 100%.
But maybe I'd love to land with one more fun question, if that's all right. Maybe you people, we don't want to land on a serious note. We want to make sure this is live at 5. It's Friday night. Maybe we don't often have men who hobnob with the celebrities of the world. We just here in Table View, the biggest celebrity I know is sitting on my left here. So
and when you were Mr. Zimbabwe, you didn't hobnob?
I know, not much of that. There wasn't a lot of that allowed by the government at that time.
Okay.
But maybe tell us some of the biggest celebrities that you have, or the ones that have stuck out of in your top billing years, or of in the line of sight on the media.
Gabe, there was one interview that I'll never forget. It was an interview with Elton John, Sir Elton John. We'd flown over to Vienna.
I knew you would have an answer.
We literally flew over just for this concert. It was an AIDS benefit concert. He performed, and we got to interview him after this performance. And we sat down waiting for Sir Elton to come in, and I looked at the list of questions, and it was kind of the usual top billing kind of questions. Tell us about the projects you're working on, latest music video. And I found when you speak to people of that stature, you've got to grab them with the first question. You've got to get their attention, and you do that not by asking those questions. So kind of put that to one side. Elton John arrives, sit down, and this was my first question. Sir Elton, as a gay man singing about sexual promiscuity at the height of the AIDS pandemic, what were you thinking?
Wow.
I see out of the corner of my eye, my director is having a hissy fit. He's just gone white about a faint. And there was, granted, a fairly long pause from Sir Elton, but then he said this. He said, that's one of the most significant questions I've ever been asked. And then we got into a serious conversation. It was the most amazing interview. It was beautiful. I mean, he just came out with what he's been trying to undo through what he did in the past. It was memorable. It really was.
Amazing.
Not that we saw most of it on top billing, unfortunately. That ended up on the editor's floor.
Yeah.
But the conversation was great. And I mean, dare I say it, ended up with a big hug and a kiss from Elton John. And I think that's good.
That's wonderful, yeah. And now I completely regret our Matthew Mol comment. That was the first thing we threw your way. I wish we'd gone something more poignant, or something more aggressive.
I mean, we could redeem it by singing Candle in the Wind now or something.
Rocket Man, or I don't know.
Yes, you could, yes. Oh, yeah, sorry, it's live at 5. We meant to lighten this up. Sorry.
No,
Go for it.
No, we can go there all day. What about signing us out? I mean, they always let the guys do on the shows. But, I mean, I realize you've been off top billing for a while, but on TV. Why don't you sign us out tonight off live at 5, as you've been our most amazing guest. Thank you so much for taking your time out, Michael. But why don't you say cheers to the people and sign out for us tonight, Mr. Michael Mol.
Mark, Gabe, it's been an absolute pleasure. To everyone watching, thank you so much for watching live at 5 from all of us here in the studio and in their homes. Good night and God bless.
That's the one.
We'll see you guys soon.